As a first step before starting the disassembly, it's crucial to power off the device. Only then can we begin cleaning. The front panel primarily vents the machine's hot air and performs certain self-cleaning functions. To remove the panel, you can use any tool. I use 2 screwdrivers, but you can also remove them by hand. As I mentioned, you'll find quite a lot of dust and lint here, especially around the ventilator. Warm air exits through the ventilator, carrying many small fibers from clothing. This needs to be cleaned. You'll primarily need a vacuum cleaner and a tool like a screwdriver to remove any stuck-on dirt. Our main goal here isn't to achieve a brand new level of cleanliness, but to remove any loose lint or debris from the device. This prevents these particles from entering sensitive areas inside the machine. Once we finish cleaning the front panel, we'll move to the back of the machine. The next step is to remove the top cover. To do this, we need to take off the side panels. This involves removing the screws. In most cases, these will be Torx screws. I found it interesting that the top screws and the bottom screws were varied sizes, so we needed different sized Torx bits. I'm not sure why the manufacturer chose to do this. I wouldn't think that the screws at the top and bottom would experience different mechanical stress, as they're simply fastening 2 panels together. Once we have access to the top panel, let's remove it and inspect the inside of the machine for any abnormalities. The first thing we might notice is a strange humming or squeaking noise. Such sounds can indicate some sort of mechanical damage, friction, wear, or abnormal contact between surfaces. Therefore, it's worth taking a good look to see exactly what we're seeing and where the sound is coming from. After that, we can proceed with cleaning the machine. To better see and identify the source of this strange noise, we need to gain access to the inside of the machine. To do this, we need to remove the side panels. However, these are also secured by Torx screws, so we'll need to remove those as well. Once we've removed the screws, we can try to take off the side panel. However, as we can see in this case, I realize that it's also secured at the bottom, so we need to remove the bottom screws as well. To access the bottom screws, we need to turn the device upside down. As you can see from the video title, this is a 7 or 8-year-old device, so I wasn't worried about scratching the sides, so I just turned it over. If you have a newer or more recent device and want to protect the finish from scratches, put some protective paper or foil underneath. As you can see, after removing the side panel, we encountered a lot of dust and lint again, so we'll clean it up with a vacuum cleaner. After removing the side panel, set it aside and try to inspect the inside of the machine again for any abnormalities. Look closely and listen for anything that seems out of place. Listen for any strange noises or sounds coming from inside the machine. As I mentioned, this could be related to some kind of mechanical friction or wear. Try to check the drivetrain and move it around to see if the drive belt is loose, if it's in place, if it runs in a straight line, or if it moves during operation. After checking this, we'll perform another thorough cleaning of the machine. Be extremely careful. As you can see here, there are 2 capacitors. These capacitors may still have a charge even if the machine was powered off half an hour ago. Do not touch or remove the insulation on the capacitors, as they may still have a charge and could cause an electric shock. Try to remove any loose dirt, dust, or lint from inside the machine that could potentially cause electrical or mechanical problems. Once we've removed the side panel, set it aside and inspect the machine's interior again for any abnormalities. Based on the sound, I suspect the bearings and rollers might be dry, so I'll use grease to lubricate them. I'm conducting a thorough inspection to check for any other issues. After multiple checks, the drive chain is in good condition, so my initial suspicion lies in the bearing lubrication. There's a bearing that tenses the guide belt, and I'll try to grease it thoroughly. Ideally, I'd completely remove the belt and bearings for better lubrication. Still, I don't want to disassemble the machine much, and I want to create a tutorial that anyone with basic technical skills can follow at home. In this case, we can lubricate these bearings without disassembling them by applying grease to the tight spaces. I'll try using my finger or any other thin tool, and later in the video, you'll see me using a screwdriver as well. It's crucial to continuously move the parts while greasing, otherwise you'll only lubricate one spot. We need to fully lubricate the entire bearing, so apply grease Move the drive chain, apply more grease, and move the chain again. Next, we'll grease the motor bearings as well. There's an electric drive motor, the heart of the drive chain, as you can see in the footage. I'm pointing right at the bearing for the control motor shaft. We need to grease that bearing too. We'll repeatedly apply grease and turn the belt, ensuring that the entire bearing is properly lubricated. Next, I'll move on to the side support rollers. The dryer drum is supported by 4 points, a rear axle and 3 front support rollers. These rollers help keep the axle centered. After that, we'll vacuum again and clean up any remaining dust and lint. After vacuuming, I'll return to the bearings. I'll give them a little time for the grease to melt in, but I'm still not entirely satisfied with the lubrication, so I'll apply another layer. You can see the support rollers from the other side, and I'll try to grease them as well. My finger won't fit in there, so I'll use a screwdriver. I'll grease a specific area, then rotate the dryer drum, apply more grease, and rotate again. You can see a big clump of lint coming out of the bearing. I'll wipe that off on a paper towel and then continue greasing and rotating the bearing. Skip the following step. This should only be performed by qualified electricians, as I did by powering on the machine without the safety cover to listen to the driving train. I checked if the drum was running smoothly and if there was any elliptical or off-center movement. I checked the roller and the driver belt for the same movement. If the shaft wasn't centered, we would see the dryer drum or the drive belt wobbling left or right. However, I didn't notice any of this, so I'm still convinced that the noise was caused by wear and tear. To reiterate, do not power on the machine if you are not a qualified electrician. Instead, manually turn the drum and check for any abnormal wobbling in the drum, rollers, or belt.
Ha mi vagyok én? Akkor mindjárt belerömögünk.
Hát vele fogom rakni.
The dryer has only one side left to disassemble before we can begin the inspection. Here too, we will start with a thorough cleaning and vacuuming. As we've seen before, the drum is supported by 3 rollers. This is the last roller that we haven't greased yet, and it needs to be thoroughly lubricated. We need to pay special attention to ensuring the bearings receive proper lubrication. Therefore, I'm not just using my finger, but also using a screwdriver to reach all the way into the bearing to ensure it gets sufficient grease. After this, I'll rotate the drum so that the balls move in all directions and the bearing receives lubrication from all sides. After lubricating the bearings, we can reassemble the side panel using the original screws. If they are worn or rusty, we will replace them with new ones. Once we are finished with this side, we need to rotate the machine again and then move on to the back. On the back, we will check the drum's bearing. I definitely expect some wear or unusual material there. We will see shortly. Now comes the bearing on the central axis of the drum. Basically, this bearing is very heavy duty, so it works very hard throughout the machine's life. We can certainly expect some kind of strange wear here. This black powder we see here is a metal swarf. The bearing is so dry as the bearing balls roll against each other, a metallic wear occurs. And here we can see the powder from the worn out light bulbs. So clearly here we need a proper lubrication and eventually a bearing replacement. I thoroughly greased the bearing to prevent future wear, but I decided not only to grease the bearing, but to fill the entire protective cover with grease. So I hope that the machine will last another 5 or 6 years with the current parts. After this, we have nothing else to do but to reassemble the machine, carefully putting back the original panels, side panels, and cover panels using the original screws. If the original screws are damaged, of course, use new ones and pay attention to the proper fit so that the machine is assembled correctly, so that later, when put into operation, it is not a safety hazard. After all, with this nearly half-hour activity, we have extended the life of our dryer by up to 5 or 6 years, thereby saving our wallet several $100s. Follow me for similar tips. Let's learn together.